Hello and welcome everyone to this week's episode of the Framework Podcast. I'm your host, Jamie Hopkins, and today I'm joined by somebody who's really been, I don't know the right word, but trailblazer, creating very cool things out there in the financial planning world, Hannah Moore. And excited, Hannah, to have you on the show. I know we've interacted in various other places before, but first time really having you on the show or interviewing you in any format for me. So I'm really excited about this.
Yes, well, thank you so much for having me. I'm excited as well.
Well, yeah, first of all, it's always, I think, helpful just to tell people a little bit about yourself before we get going in case they're not aware of you. But yeah, so just who are you? What do you do? Kind of, hey, world.
Hey there. Yeah, so I'm Hannah Moore. I fell into financial planning. I started 22, started working for a woman who was 68. 4 years later, bought her practice, bought another practice soon after that. So I was 26 and running a practice. Kind of crazy to think about that. And so I had probably between 250 and 300 different client relationships that I was managing. It was probably, when I left, it was about 70 million in assets under management that I was managing. So went through that whole succession plan at a very young age, learned a lot of very interesting lessons. And so I ended up working with my clients really, a lot of the practice, we did some financial planning, but it was really focused on the investment management piece. And like so many planners out there, I realized that what I loved was the financial planning, and it was really engaging with clients in those relationships. And so I started really diving into what was financial planning. And so I started building out those relationships and really being like, here's my financial planning process, and taking clients through. And it was a night and day difference for me, from clients who were just the investment management to ones that were financial planning. So several years after I bought the practice, the opportunity kind of arose for me to leave the broker-dealer that I was at. And so I started an RIA. We were always under the title of Guiding Wealth. Like when I bought the practices, it was really important for me. I didn't want it to be a name to name, so it was like a name to Guiding Wealth. And so Guiding Wealth transitioned over to an RIA. I took just a handful of clients. My workload, I probably went from working 50 to 60 hours a week to something far, far more manageable, to really help give me the life that I wanted. The irony is, throwing out the year that I moved, my take-home revenue stayed the same. So kind of a crazy from a business owner side of it. So anyway, I made that transition, and in that transition, I had been going to my local FPA to really help me learn what financial planning was, and there was a seminar series called "You're a Financial Planner, Now What?" And so the folks who started it retired from it, if you will, and so I took it over with another woman who did some of the local stuff with me. But we started putting it on the internet. So I worked full time with my husband. He's not a financial planner. He is a media production and educator. And so we started doing this podcast just kind of for fun, because it's what I needed when I started. And so we're like 220 something episodes in now. So we partnered with a national FPA of helping build out their new planner resources. So I still have my practice here. I love working with clients. I am a financial planner that's in my blood, but I'm also very passionate about how do we educate financial planners, particularly those who are entering into financial planning, and providing not just sales training, but actually how do you be a better financial planner? And so we have a lot of projects and initiatives kind of around that, but that's kind of me in a nutshell.
Yeah.
What I've done.
Well, that was awesome. And we're going to, as I always tell people, I've got the time machine, so I get to pull us back into all those pieces and learn some more about them. But that was an awesome overview. Another question I've been asking people, I'm going to do kind of two fun icebreaker questions now. One of them is I've been asking all the guests just about food. I love food. I'm a foodie, so I like to get other people's sense on it, whether it's your favorite food or, if it's a family thing that you relate to food. But what comes to your mind when you think of food? Is it a last dish, a favorite item, anything like that?
Well, it's funny. So I have two answers for you. So one is mashed potatoes, always a lifetime favorite, but I'm pregnant right now, so I'm not sure if we're going to get into that story, but or more of like what that looks like. But my pregnancy craving is Domino's pizza. Like what? Like very odd.
Okay.
So I would say mashed potatoes, and at this time for these months, it's Domino's pizza.
Well, those are both interesting ones. I haven't had anyone else on the show say mashed potatoes.
Oh man.
There was probably a portion of my life where mashed potatoes, I don't know if they ever became my number one favorite thing, but they were up in the top three. And, but I love the fact that like mashed potatoes could be turned into multiple different things. So like potato pancakes were really big. Like my grandmother would
Yeah.
make those, and those were really good. So I liked having the mashed potatoes around. So what Domino's, is it a particular, I mean, like regular, there's a thin crust, like what pizza at Domino's is getting the
Oh,
craving?
you got to like add lots of cheese on it. It's like all the different types of cheese.
Yeah.
So it's like a 5 cheese or something like that. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. And were you a Domino's fan before, or like do you
I mean,
just
not
grab
like this. I think it's the crust that has me coming back. I don't know. It's so funny. But that's my pregnancy craving. So
Yeah. Well, I was really big into Domino's in college. They had that
I know, right?
like 3 for 15 deal. And so two of my roommates and I would always order that, and we'd all eat our own pizza. And that was like a big thing back then. But
My husband has commented on that. He was like, "Are we back in college now?" And I'm like, "Just let me have what I'm craving."
uh, well, I mean, that's a good piece too. I mean, so new kid. So you said
Yeah.
you have one already. Is that correct?
Yes. So I have a 2-year-old little girl, and we're due at the end of March. So
Okay. Well,
yeah, but it's been so great. I love talking to new people who are looking for a career change or new financial planners, because you really can. I mean, they say you can't have it all, but we can have a lot in this profession. And we look at our office. We have a nursery here at our office. We actually have my daughter has a full nursery, and so as we're looking at what maternity leave looks like, we just have so many options on how I can structure my life and work, and knowing that like there's a place for baby number 2 here at the office as well. It just helps really kind of integrate your life in a way that I just don't think that I just haven't found I haven't seen a better career option for that.
Yeah, I've got a good friend out in Vegas, and she literally, like, next to her office built like the nursery
Mm-hmm.
little daycare room, and had
Yep.
somebody full time in there to like watch
Yep.
her kids while she worked. And I think that's awesome, right? And you're right, not a lot of professions or opportunities out there present themselves uniquely like that does. Well, congratulations. That's very
Thank you.
exciting. Uh, Next thing, I've started to ask people this. You might even ask clients this sometimes too. And that's why I started to ask this question to advisors and other guests on the show, which is, what was your first experience with money? Do you have one? Have you thought
Mm.
about it or answered that before? Positive or negative, either one.
It's interesting. I don't really have like a money origin story. This isn't quite going back to what you're the thing that immediately comes to mind. So it's not answering directly what you're asking. But I remember being in high school and loving like the money talk shows. Do you remember that? I mean, they're still
Yeah.
out there, right? And I remember just driving around in my car because I just like wanted to listen to them. And I remember always having this like pinch of like, they're forgetting that they're people. Like, and there's always this sense of just like people would give us advice, and I'm just like, don't they see the person? And so I don't know, that I always thought of that kind of as an early age of thinking more about like, I should have known this was a career for me. I had no idea, but
Yeah. Well,
yeah.
that is a good one, right? Because you were realizing like the human element behind these,
Mm-hmm.
right? And that you felt that was missing. Well, you mentioned a car. What car were you driving back then? Did
Oh
you have a pretty
man.
sweet car?
Oh, it was bad. It was like, oh my gosh, I can't even remember. I'm not a car person. It was ugly. It was like this ugly green color, like a light green color, and it was like a 1988, no, 1992 Dodge something.
Yeah, with a nice green tint to it.
Ooh,
Yeah. Well, did you buy that car yourself? Was it a
I
pass
did. So
down?
it was
Okay.
like $1,000 car, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah, $1,000 car. Got a loan from the bank for it. Worked a lot, high school, kind of learned some of those
Yeah.
lessons early
Yes.
on.
See, we're working back to this money origin, right? So I
Right?
already know, right? You bought a car, you got a loan, so you had some early money experiences here. And what were you work? What did you work and do in high school or early age? What was the
Yeah.
first job?
So I had 3 papers. So I did paper routes very, very young. And we talk about family stories, right? So my dad worked at Walmart and my mom stayed home with me and my 4 brothers up in South Dakota. And so they would do, both my parents had paper routes all growing up. My dad would he would do carpet cleaning. So I would go carpet cleaning with my dad. So probably very, very early on, I was doing paper routes with my parents, helping them do that. And then I started working at some of the fast food places. Hardee's, did that for quite a while. So I drove papers in the morning and work Hardee's in the evening. So.
Okay. And, I mean, what was that? So would you say you have how many siblings?
4 brothers, 4 younger
4?
brothers.
Okay, 4 younger brothers. Yeah. Okay. So how was that dynamic? Did you have to take on like a big sister life and mentality over them, or did they all survive without you?
Well, they would have survived without me. Oh no, I think they definitely, when they hear stories about them, I think there's a great picture. So it's more on video, we can do this. There's a great picture at my wedding where I have all my brothers, and they're all like 18 plus at this point. And I'm in my wedding dress and they're all like the ushers or whatever. And I'm like, have my finger out, and all of them are like at attention. And it's like, this is an appropriate picture of what the relationship looks like.
Yeah, it's funny. You're like, so the oldest, and I have 4 younger sisters. So we got the
fun.
exact
Yeah.
like opposite experience. All right. So let's we'll kind of move forward a bit, I guess. But well, actually, I mean, do you remember your banking experience? Because that's an earlier banking experience than a lot of people. Like my first banking experience was like a lot of people like. It was when I got to college and there's some bank on campus, and that's the first time I've ever interacted with any type of like financial institution. But like, do you remember going in and getting the loan and that, like, any of that? Or
Yeah. Oh yeah. And I had a bank account really early on because we had to do it. So I mean, there was like a Wells Fargo. I mean, so we were in South Dakota, it's big up there. So we had just like a normal bank account. I remember going, to a credit union. I remember not understanding all of it, but just being like, it was just very normal. Like it was very much normal part of what it was. And it's so funny now. I'm like, how did I even know how much was in my account? I mean, now it's an app. I didn't have a phone back then.
Yeah.
I guess I could have logged in online, but that's funny to think about too. Of like, how would I even be tracking all of that? But yeah, I remember the little tear off sheets that I would do for the car load. Yeah.
Well, that's why people had to keep like the balanced books, right? Like people would track because like your checkbook would track to your bank, and you'd go and you'd make sure like the accounts are aligned and things. But that process of trying to balance all that today, right? Like we don't think about that anymore, which is funny. I remember maybe it was like 3 or 4 years ago, we were building a program at American College, and somebody said like, oh, well, one of the basics is like balancing the checkbook. And somebody said that. I was like, nobody balances. I mean, not the next generation. Like, yeah, I'm sure that there are still lots of people that balance their checkbooks, right? That's the process that they're familiar with. But that's not like, nobody born today will ever know what that's like, because it's an app on your phone. You pull it up, and like, that's how I deposit checks too. Like I don't go to branch locations anymore. I mean, it's just long gone. So when did you start kind of figuring out that this financial services profession might be the way for you? So did you in college get an experience with it, or?
So it's interesting. So growing up where I grew up, and just in how I grew up, I'm gonna say it feels like a different world. But I didn't know anybody who needed to who needed a college degree to do their job. And so I was always, it was kind of a given that I was going to go to college. So I went to Baylor, and I just wanted to help people. Like almost a simplistic mindset of I just want to help people, and I'm good with numbers. I'm good. I knew I wanted to be in the business school. And so I was actually going to do a nonprofit management was the direction that I was going. And I worked in this nonprofit. And I went from helping the receptionist to, at the end of those several years, I was like the right hand, I guess, woman for the finance director. So I was helping them with all of their grants, with all their bookkeeping. I was doing all their payroll. I was doing their bank recs. I was really involved, had a very, very strong background in that while in school. And it was so interesting. I really feel like I fell into this. I came home one day, and this is so not my personality, because I am the type that'll just bang my head against a wall for days, for years. But I came home one day and I was just like, I can't do this the rest of my life. And it was just so like, it was just such a moment where, and it's just so counter kind of how I'm wired. But I realized that, I was really viewing myself as like, there's social workers and like, I love them, but they're not that great with numbers. And if I can be that numbers person that really enables them, but I was just like, no, this isn't right. And so I had taken an intro to personal finance class just kind of on a whim because I was interested in it. And anyway, I did really well. And so the professor quite literally the next day pulled me aside and asked and suggested, he told me, he's like, we've never had a student do as well as you in like consistently in my program. And he's like, you need to consider changing your major. And I like, no idea what I was doing. I was just like, okay. And so the craziest part about this is that was literally the next day. And then the day after that, I had to sign up for my last semester of classes. And so if I wouldn't have made that decision, I wouldn't have been able to get into financial planning. So I very much feel very, very fortunate. Just was kind of how the sequence of everything really lined up.
Yeah, that's like cutting it very close there on timing, right? That's a 2-day window.
Oh my gosh, I know. I think I would have eventually, well, I don't know. I always viewed myself as, I would do something at like a local church or something, like a volunteer, like run a Dave Ramsey class in the evening or something like that. I always knew that was what I would do, but I didn't even know this was an option. I didn't even know people hired people, like so many people, they just don't know that this is a career option.
Yeah. Well, do you remember what it was that caused you to feel like I can't do this the rest of my life? Was it like an actual thing, or was it just?
Yeah,
you're like, yes, I remember, but
well, no, I'm just trying to think. It was just interesting the types of problems that we were solving, right? I think that maybe was it. Is that it was a lot of it was the bank rec. It was all of these different things. I think I had a friend once, she was an accounting major. She sat next to her at graduation, and she described it as accounting. She loved accounting, but she also loved the people. And I think I was seeing myself so removed from the people. And so it's like, well, I could do a good job of it. It wasn't that fulfillment that so many people are actually looking for. I needed to be more connected to the helping people.
So you make the right choice and head down the financial planning route. And so did you get experience while still in school, like interacting with advisors through the program? What did that look like, through your college program, right? Did they help with that mentorship experience, internship?
Mm-hmm. So I did get an internship up here in Dallas. So that was a really good experience. It's really what opened the doors, for me to get the job eventually, and that I did get. And it was interesting because that internship, I scanned the entire summer. Like it kind of sucked. Like it was literally like I walked in on my internship like the first day, and they were like, "Okay, see that wall of everything? Like you need to scan all of it." And so I was so proud. I did it. Like I worked so hard. I scanned the entire wall. And I was like, now I can actually do what all the other interns are doing and like all this cool stuff. And then like, I was like, I'm done. Like what next? And they're like, there's the next wall. And I was like crushed. But there was, but what was really great about this, and I always talk to new planners about it, you take advantage of the opportunities that you're given. And so it was so great because I got to read the documents and I got to read like really understand how clients' files are structured. I got to see clients who'd been with this firm for 15 years. How did their notes change, right? Like I got to see how clients got to progress through it. So it certainly wasn't the most ideal situation, but I learned so much that helped me later in my career. It was very foundational for me. So it wasn't exactly fun, but I learned a lot in that experience.
And so was that like a data retention storage move, or were they digitalizing?
They were just digitalizing everything.
They're like, just that was it, making it all digital.
great firm. Like, I love this firm. I have some dear friends from that time still, and they do a really great job on their internship program. It was just this team that I was on. They were like, this is the project we need.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I get it.
Important work for a business isn't always fun work, right?
Yeah, right.
Yeah. And that's the right decision, right? You shouldn't have like the senior wealth advisor.
Yeah.
You use the interns and newer,
And it was
younger.
better than throwing papers or working at Hardee's. So, I mean, you get all perspective.
Yeah, that's better, right? It's and as you said, right, that kind of opened up some doors. So, where did that kind of lead to then? As you said, it did open up access.
So I ended up so I graduated December 08. So, you know, with the financial crash and everything that was happening. And so I get out, and again, my context is I have no idea what a professional life is. Like, I'm still working at this nonprofit. I mean, they're like 40 hours a week. They're like, how much can you work? How long can you stay? Like, I mean, they would be happy if I was still there, I'm pretty sure. And in my head, that's what it was. That I would be making $12 an hour the rest of my life. Like, that's what I knew. And so I ended up through my local FPA, so the DFW FPA career fair, I ended up getting a job. I was there for a month. It wasn't a good fit. You know, there are lots of reasons on that. But I had a professor who had met this lady, and they sat on an ethics board together. And so I had been contacting her, and I was like, I got this job offer. I need, like, anyway, we ended up, we knew that this initial job that I got didn't work through. So I met with her on a Sunday afternoon at a Starbucks. And she was basically like, I'm desperate for help. I don't even know where to go find anybody. And I'm looking for a succession plan. Are you interested? And I was just like, and it was so great. I won't forget this. She had my resume, and she's looking at it. She's like, everything you did at this internship is so perfect, even down to the scanning. And I was like, I knew it. I knew it would come back. But she mentioned the scanning specifically. I felt it's how I justify it, maybe. And so she asked about the succession plan, and I was like, absolutely. I'm like, getting into my car, I'm like, I have no idea what that is. Like, truly had no idea what that was. And so she was ready to offer me a job on the spot. I talked to some other people in the office. And so within the week, I had a job offer of coming and working for her. So that's kind of how that got started.
Yeah. And that's pretty, I mean, I love that piece where you're like, and I justified all of it because she mentioned it, right? You find that piece of data, that information that backs up what you think, and you're
right.
good, right? Yeah.
Complete confirmation bias. I don't even care.
Yep. Like, nope. I'm okay with that one.
we can just use it to justify things. I'm all about that. Yeah.
Well, that's pretty interesting, right? That she was thinking succession planning there, right? Mm-hmm. That's as you know, and I know, right? That's a big struggle for advisors in general, right? Especially more independent ones. They create their own businesses, and that's the great, and you have freedom, but there's no real plan for what happens later on, right? And so, tell us. So you start there. And, pretty short period of time, right, to you become the succession plan. So it was, not a 15-year succession plan, but a very quick succession plan.
It was a throw me in the deep end, see if you survive. And so it was interesting because there was another woman there who was also supposed to be part of her succession plan. And so she had been that 10-year, 15-year succession plan part. And so about a year or two into me being there, and it was kind of clear of like, they were going to, like, she wanted part of it to go to her, like, there's all these different pieces that were kind of tied to it. But she ended up leaving. So it was kind of more that traditional, I love this phrase, perma-5. My friend Josh Patrick uses that for business owners who are always permanently 5 years from retirement. Mm-hmm. And this other woman had heard that for 10, 15 years. And so it just kind of, the timing worked out really well for me. And I was so young and just kind of hit the right time at the right experience. And so, 4 years later, I started when she was 68. And so at 72, is when she made that transition.
Yeah, the perma-5 one, I like that. That's
I know, it was pretty clever. I was like, I like that one.
Yeah, I don't think I've heard that before. At least I don't recall hearing it before. So I like that. And Yeah, I know you and I have talked before about some of my decisions, but I wouldn't say that was the driving decision on one of my changes, but it was a factor, right? Like I looked at
Hmm.
somebody and said, part of the conversation was like, oh, we could train you up and be a succession plan. I was like, but like I'm not really sure if that person's anywhere near. Like it very
Yeah.
well could be 15 years, and that I'm not all that interested in, right? Like that's a completely different conversation at that point. So um, did you learn anything from that experience? And you asked me this before, which is, to create a better succession plan, what would you be doing if you went back? Was there anything that should have been done differently there, or do you think that kind of turned out the way, obviously it turned out well for you, but for one person who spent like 13 years there or whatever, right, didn't turn out that well. I think, what do you think? Like, would you have done something different in that case?
Oh my goodness. Well, so it's turned out well for me. So like yes to that. I think there's a lot of things you do differently, right? And I think, it's hard is it's really fascinating. I've gone through the Susan Bradley training for the Financial Transitionist Institute, and I see so many like parallels to what we're doing, as financial planners, as we're helping our business owner clients exit businesses, as we're exiting businesses ourselves. And I see so many of the pitfalls that financial planners face kind of in that space as well. So, now we have an employee trying to build out a career path and kind of struggling it from the other side of what that looks like. And I think, having those clear expectations and, you should be putting your money where your mouth is. Like if you're really saying that somebody is going to be your succession plan, like what does that look like? Put those agreements in place. If they're not in place, like why aren't they in place? And I think there's just a lot of questions, and I'm getting a little bit more optimistic on it, but there was a while there where I was not optimistic at all. People would be like, oh, you went through a succession plan, like you're the success story. And I would be like, I wouldn't do it. Like if I, in a different situation, I remember going to my very first next gen gathering, and it felt like such a lifeline to me because there was nobody else in my situation, right? I'm a 25-year-old who's looking at buying a practice in the next year. Like, what the heck? And so I went to this, so it's FPA Next Gen, so it's like for new planners. And I remember going up to the person who organized it and I was like, I just need to talk to somebody who's in a succession plan right now. And she literally just went, they tried, and they tried. And I was just like, you've got to be kidding me. Like, it was very isolating. And so, it ended up working out well, but I think asking a lot of the questions, like the honesty and the transparency behind it, I think is really important. I have another friend, Lynn McIntyre here in Dallas, where she talks about succession plans, and she's like, the number one reason they don't work, she's like, it's because financial planners don't have their financial plan in order. And so it was just interesting, that perspective too, of it's not just, can the financial planner afford to retire? There's a lot of things that go into this. And I think the more transparent we can be and the more, we try to hold on to our identity as a financial planner and hold on to all of these, different things. And, we talk about, with our clients who are retiring, like, what are you retiring to? A lot of those conversations, it's a lot of like, the work that we do as financial planners, like that's the work that needs to be done, in some of these succession plans. And it's not easy, and they're hard conversations, but I always tell new planners, if you're not willing to have those hard conversations, you're not ready to be a business owner. And that's part of what comes with it. And so it's, if somebody is in that position and they're struggling having those conversations, they're struggling making progress in that, and they don't see a path forward, either you're in the wrong spot or you need to do some personal development to figure out like what it is that you need to do in order to grow into that business owner mindset.
Yeah, and one of the things you brought up before resonates with me on the challenges around the succession planning, which is, right, you listed as a positive, right? Like you can kind of create as an advisor the lifestyle that you want, right? Like, which is I can structure my hours and still make a good living. I don't have to come in every day. I can have childcare right next door to me. And it's been a challenge because you get, as you said, the always 5 years for retirement, because the 75-year-old planner can work 3 days a week, can work 2 days a week, can structure a lifestyle where they're not forced out because they own the business. And it honestly has, right, the benefit of this world is kind of allowed for, right, that behavior, where in some businesses, right, like if you're 75, 80 and you're not going to work all the time, like you're not going to make it in the business anymore, right? Like it's not going to kind of allow that lifestyle.
One of the things that I'm really always, I don't know, I'm always pick up on this is, how do business owners, or how do firm owners or senior managers in firms, how do they view their younger talent, right? And so I spend a lot of time training and talking to new planners, and it's always interesting to me is, how do you view your younger talent? Are they there to support your lifestyle? Or are they growing professionals? Are they brilliant young planners who are going to bring new ideas, are going to bring innovation? Are they the future? Like, how do you view the other staff in your office? Are they just your secretary to get stuff done? Or are you actively engaging in a career path? Because if they're just your secretary to get things done, like, that's fine. I hope they know that. Like, for their sake, we'll just get that clear. I hope they know that. And some people are fine with that, right? Like, I mean, I on my team, we're looking to hire somebody, and none of my practice within some of this other stuff I'm doing. And the fact that some of the people we're interviewing right now don't have career aspirations. They're like, I don't want to grow into this big career. I don't want to move up. Like, to me, it's like the perfect fit. So it's finding the right people in the right seats. But how do you view your younger talent? How do you view the people at your firm? Because if you viewed them as brilliant and amazing and bringing all of this energy and things into your firm, like, you can't just, you're going to compensate them fairly. You're going to be incentivizing them. You're going to be doing these things. And if you don't view them that way, number one, they know. And then you're always going to be limited on that. You're going to be limited on your growth.
So when you decided to buy the, I guess, second practice, how did that deal come about? How did you find it? I know there's articles about this too, but
no, you're totally fine. It's very different. So the second one, it was another friend. So he was in the same broker dealer, and he called me up one day, and he was just like, "This is too hard." Not too hard. He was like, "I've realized that, like, this isn't what I want to do. I don't want to be doing this, and it was a lot of like advisory work or whatever. But he was just like, I've accepted a job at another place, and I can't bring my clients over, and I want you to buy them. And here's the terms. And they were very favorable to me. And he was like, I want you to be the planner. And we need to get this done by next Monday. So we did.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. Did you need, like, I guess, how did you end up, how was that deal structured? Like, were you doing trail? Was it a full buyout?
Yeah, it was trail. I had no money. So here's the even better story about all of this. I look at the door, my husband's in the other room. I don't want to, yeah. We got married, and 10 weeks later I bought the first practice. So that was January 1. And the second practice was like in March. And so we got married, and I think we had maybe $500 to our name. And so my husband, we were long distance. So he had moved to Dallas because he was a teacher at the time and looking to make a career change himself. So he didn't have a job. We had $500 to our name, and I buy this practice. So we had no money. And so it was, we did trails. So we based off of the previous year and like forecasted it out what like that normal comp would be. And so it was like a 5-year buyout structure for the initial one. And then the second one, it was, we did like 1 time recurring revenue. And so then we just structured it out over the year.
Yeah. And then, so did your broker dealer at that point help with those type of things, or was yours very hands-off in the succession transition planning?
Buy me a beer someday and I'll tell you no, I'm just, so it was, they definitely had the resources available to do that. We chose to go another route, but they definitely had the resources there as well.
Yeah. It's just, yeah.
Yeah.
You can't drink now anyway. So
I know. And we're in quarantine or like, locked up.
Yeah. So I can't do any of those things. So that's a good answer. All right. So, so you get the 2 practices, you start building them out. Yeah. And then what was, you went through this before, when did you kind of realize that you wanted another change there, right? And you leave the broker dealer side?
Yeah. So, it really started. So we had like $500 to our name. Like it was, I would just pace at night because there was so much stress because I'm like, oh my God, I know they're pulling money out of my bank account. And like, I hope more money comes in. Like, it was just
Mhm.
learning to be a business owner as well. And we ended up using the Fox Financial Planning Network. They're called Advisor Touch, I think now, but they build out the processes for financial planning. And so there was, because I was terrified. I was a 26-year-old who, I knew one way of doing the work that I was doing. I was like, what am I going to be missing? And so I bought a processes and checklists for financial planning. What does this look like? So, it gave me the confidence that I could walk into a meeting and I found like, this 50-point checklist, like I had gone through all of it. So I knew that I wasn't going to be missing something. And so, we started doing this financial planning like options, really helping build that out. And again, like I said before, I noticed a difference in those relationships. And so then there was somebody at the broker dealer who offered to, well, there was an arrangement that was available to me to where they would take the existing clients, and so they would finish the buyout piece that was left, but taking those clients. And so it was just an opportunity where I was like, this is the right opportunity at the right time, and so I took it. So definitely wasn't. It's so interesting looking back at it. It was one of the best things for me, but it was definitely. I mean, just like so many transitions, it's scary, but it was definitely a good transition for me.
Yeah. So did you know exactly what you were going to do when you were like, okay, so I'm going to go through this and, you know, transition? And did you have the vision of what was next already in your mind?
Yeah, so I'm a big dreamer. Like I can, I know where I want to be. And so I think, whenever I talk to new planners, I always talk about that. It's like know where you want to be, because when you have these inflection points, you can move not just 2 steps ahead, you can move 10 steps ahead to where you want to be. And so that's what I did. When we looked at the numbers, it was just like, I'm like, I don't believe, like, this is too good to be true. I don't believe that this is possible. But it was just like, but it is. And this is what I've been saying that I wanted. And then it was just like, okay, like let's take this leap of faith and do it. And we did it. And it was just like, oh my gosh, like this is absolutely possible. And not just possible, but it was so rewarding and fulfilling. And so it was really interesting. One of the things you talked about, kind of my work history, I was a type who started, I was probably 8 years old during paper out. Like let's be real. And I was a college student who was working 40 hours a week while going to school full time. And then, working, I mean, all I knew was to work hard all the time. And so after I made this transition, I was exhausted, like physically exhausted. And I just gave myself permission. So I could work with my clients for like 15 to 20 hours a week is what it was. And I gave myself permission that I was like, I'm done. I'm not doing marketing. I'm not trying to grow my practice. All I'm going to do is 6 months. I'm going to rest. I'm going to figure out what this is. I'm just going to slow down and just, yeah, give myself permission to do that, which is so counter to everything I knew, because it was just work harder, work harder, work harder. And it was so cool to see how important that was, how important rest is to the creativity process. I started reading this book, The Artist's Way, and working through it. I only got through halfway of it. It completely flipped how I viewed my work as a financial planner. When someday I'm going to give a talk on what it means to approach your work like an artist. And the best financial planners I know do that. And so it's not so much, we're not at a little, I don't know, assembly line. We're really, the best financial planners are artists in what we do. It changes our approach. It changes everything about us. And so after those 6 months, it really gave me this energy and this new vision for what I wanted my career to be.
That's awesome. Yeah, that is not a lesson I've learned well. So I still fall into the other group. I am a true like grinder. I just keep working. I just the whole every time somebody's like work smarter, and I'm like I don't understand that. What do you mean?
I still struggle. So like I am like I give that as an example, but that was yeah.
Yeah, and I like the idea of artists too, and So that's I haven't read the book, but that's probably a recommend. You would recommend others to
Yeah.
check it out.
And it's a lot of work. So they have you do morning pages every day. Like you go on artist dates. Like it's definitely kind of out there. But what it really does is it really helps. It just changes your perspective. It changes your perspective on how you do your work. Artists create because they need to create. They don't create because there's a project that they have to do, right? You don't create for the outcome. You create because of the inherent joy of creating. And so when you start thinking of your work that way, it changes your motivation. It changes why you're doing what you're doing. It changes, it has changed the quality of my work. It's let me play and be creative in spaces where there's no foreseeable outcome. There have been outcomes that have come from it, but I just get to play, and I give myself permission to do that without being like, what are the business objectives of this? How am I going to, monetize this? It's just more of like, I just get to do this because I'm creative and this is my creative outlet. And if it does turn into something, that's great. And we have examples of that. And if it doesn't, like, I'm a better person for it.
So what's your favorite thing you've been able to create then?
Oh man, I don't think I've shown this to you. I actually went and grabbed a box just to show you. Okay. So this is a story. So budgeting with clients, right? I basically stopped doing it because I was terrible at it. And I did what everybody said. And it was like these spreadsheets and like wasting my clients' time and wasting my time and my clients, no change ever happened, nothing, right? And so anyway, I got these 2 doctors coming in as clients. I made over lots of money, almost $500,000, no idea where their money went. And so they heard me on a local NPR station talking about budgeting, and they're like, we need help with budgeting. And I was like, okay, so I really want to work with you guys. And I was like, I didn't tell them this. This is what's going on in my head. And I was like, but I don't know how to do budgeting. Like, I know how to do a spreadsheet. I know how to do all the traditional things that we're trained as financial planners to do, but I don't know how to do this. And so I ended up, so I had a conversation with Dr. Ted Klontz, like several years before this. And one of the things he told me was, anything we can tell, we can show. It still haunts me, that phrase. Like, I think about it a lot, of how so much of what we do as financial planners, we're telling people what to do. We're not showing them. Very big difference, very big, lots of learning theories behind this. So I was like, okay, so how the heck can I show my clients their budget? So I ended up going to a learning store and I bought these blocks. So anyway, I did these blocks with these clients. So I visualized their budget. So I gave them the number of blocks that was their income. So each block was like $100 or something. And they literally moved it around the table. And it started connecting, like, in really, really cool ways, as I started watching them like pull all these things together. And they ran out of blocks and they were just like, oh my God, what do we do? And I was like, well, I had the red. They're not red anymore. Some red blocks, and they could immediately see where they were overspending. And the wife, they had their mortgage and their housing. And so they're like standing up, like fully engaged, looking at their budget. She grabs her mortgage, puts it next to all of their student loans, their credit card, and their car payments, and just goes, oh my God, is that how much money we're paying in debt, or paying for loan payments every month? And I was like, yeah. She was just like, oh my God, we have to stop this. And like, they did. Like, this is the thing, is it really started motivating them in a different way. So I started doing this with more and more clients and realized how powerful it was. So we actually created a product. It's like, you can go to education store. Like, we're not making a ton of money off of this. Like, that's not our play on this. You can go to education store and buy the blocks too. But we created like a whole set of blocks now for people to like do. So we have like some training for financial planners on how to do this with their clients, but yeah, we actually have like real blocks. And then like a workbook for people who want to do it on their own, can go through it. So we do a values exercise. What's important to you about money? We look at how you spent money. We reflect back on your values exercise. How does this enhance or whatever with your life? And then we go back in and rearrange your budget. So it's really doing a lot of the psychology that we need to be doing with our clients and their budgeting, but very, very visual. And so these clients come back to my office and they're like pointing at the table, remember when we talked about moving this over here? Like it's just how it connects in the brain. So this is one of my favorite, this is like a side project that I have,
Yeah, no,
which I don't think I told you about before. So kind of
no,
random.
I haven't, and the thing is, like, it's probably like you and me, like, I know some things about you because I've read articles about you
Yeah.
before, right? Where you've been interviewed. But no, this is brand new for me too. So I didn't know about the blocks. This
So
is awesome.
my big thing is I want to change the way people think and talk about money. That's my driver for everything that I do. It's the driver for my practice. It's the driver for my new planner initiatives, and eventually someday a direct to consumer thing. And I, this is really for me, it's almost like this passion project of, I really want to change the narrative that we have around money. And so many times with budgets, I always say it's what I was taught, it was from somebody else who was good with spreadsheets, and it was, I'm successful, so do what I do. And it's like, no, we can't do that. Like, that's starting from the wrong place. It's how do you learn? How do you engage? How can I help my clients, right? Our clients will be our greatest teachers if we allow them to be. And so I was learning from my clients that they didn't like spreadsheets, that was going way over their heads, but they were very visual. I had a lot of very visual clients, very creative clients, or like kinesthetic learners. And so this is just, it's how can we, we've told people that they're bad with money for years and years and years, decades, right? Because they don't think like us. And it's like, no. We just haven't figured out a better way of teaching them. We haven't figured out a better way of reaching them exactly where they are yet. The problem isn't them being bad with the money. The problem is us. Like, we haven't figured out how to engage with them better. And so I don't know, it's something a side project.
Yeah, no, I love it. So that's a beautiful way to represent all of this, right? Because going back to one of your first points, right? It's about the people that you're trying to serve and getting to them, not, as is a struggle for a lot of advisors and probably people in different professions as we start trying to show that we're the experts and like, here's what I know about this. And let me and it's not then communicating over in the way that the person wants to be communicated with. So
I always use as an example my prospect meetings. And I was like, my job is to make it simple. My job is to make it so you can understand. And like, if there's just like this relief. I talk to my clients and they're just like, yes, that's what we want. Like, we don't want to be confused. We just want it simple and clear.
Yeah. And it's a challenge, right? Like, that's harder than going the complex route, right? Like, it's way harder. And advisors sometimes struggle with it. Like, have struggled with it as like a teacher to advisors. Like, I realized when I first started teaching, I actually got like surprisingly good reviews on my teaching. And part of it was like, I didn't know enough. So I could only teach like the basic concepts, right? Like, I didn't know all the details and I didn't know products then. So I couldn't get to certain levels. And then, like being in the profession now for like 15 years, I'm a lot deeper in knowledge, and I tend to like wander off into esoteric places that like don't relate to anyone. And then I'm like, oh, nobody's going to like this. I totally just like left the building and nobody came with me. Well, the other thing that you care a lot about, right? Next gen in our profession, right? So tell us what you're doing there. I know we're getting up on time, but this is always the like, what's coming next. So we've got two things I know that we still want to hit. So next gen, let's talk about that a little bit. And then you've got something else coming out. So let's make sure we get those here in our time.
Okay. So this last year, so I've been consulting with FPA and working on the new planner initiatives. And so we had this whole plan of what we're going to do in 2020, and like everybody else that got blown up. And we recognized, it wasn't just financial planning, this was larger scale of what we're losing. So many students were losing their internship prop. And so we ended up realizing, like, let's just think outside the box. Let's throw the box out and like reimagine this. If we could reimagine internships, what would that look like? And so we created a virtual externship program. So really showcasing what financial planning looks like in a broad sense. And so we realized, we did focus groups, we did all these things. We realized that we could give the experience and we could have students do the work as if they were in an internship, but from multiple different firms. So students got to see what their career path was, which was the number one reason why students want to do internships. They got to see where they wanted to end up in their profession. We got to expose them them to so many different things. And so we had the externship program. It was kind of a perfect storm for everything. We had over 1,900 students sign up. We partnered with TD Ameritrade and eMoney and Morningstar. So students actually got to do the work that they would have done in these internships. They got 160 hours of continuing education credit. We really pulled in together, like, what is the best of class of education right now? What does this look like? And so really giving students this amazing experience and look into financial planning. What does this actually look like as a career option? So we just had tremendous success with that. And so we are going to be doing a 2021 summer externship as well. And we're going to be launching that probably very soon. If you guys, you can go to fpaexternship.org. That's where the website's going to be living. But it's an incredible opportunity. We found people who were a decade into their career. We're just like, we learned more in this externship than we had learned, in 10 years of me being in practice. It's really showing like what is at the root of financial planning. How do planners do it differently? And what are the commonalities and what does this look like? So an incredibly engaging experience. We're finding, people who are, college students, we had high school students do it. We found a lot of career changers. So it's what we realized, we thought we were solving an internship problem for like juniors and seniors in college. And what we were really solving for is an access to financial planning program problem. So we got into over 200 universities. It was pretty incredible opportunity. And so we're really excited to kind of build off of this and really give a taste of what does financial planning look like. So really excited about what that's going to look like this summer.
Yeah, it's amazing. And I mean, I'm so proud that was done. So congratulations and everyone that was involved with that. I mean, it truly is opening up access to the profession because students really don't know what a career would be like in this profession at all. I mean, it's not there. It's not your norm. So many programs still don't have financial planning programs and people in there. So it's tough.
And we got students who had to work construction during the day, and they were able to do this in the night. We had so many stay-at-home moms who were looking to get back in the workforce. We were getting people who were on long commutes from jobs that they hated and were looking at a new career change. All the way, I mean, the variety of people that we had in here was just really mind-blowing to us. But it was about access.
So last thing here before we close out is you've got a new announcement, right? New company, new So tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, well, one of the things that we realized in doing the externship and just all of our work with new planners is a question that we got over and over. There's a massive training gap, right? I mean, FP is definitely filling in some of this space, but this training gap between what does it look like to be a great financial planner? Lots of work on how to build a good business, lots of resources on that, but how do you be a good financial planner? And so what we have done is we have launched, we called it Amplified Planning, the Amplified Planning Project. And we have gotten clients to agree to let you into our meetings, like real financial planning meetings. So these are not mock client meetings. Like we get thrown for the loops. I'm actually going to be doing a review of one in just like today or tomorrow, where like the technology quit working on me. How do you handle this? So we're really going to be showing you, again, the showing, not telling. We're not going to tell you how to do financial planning. We're going to be showing you what a real financial planning meeting looks like, why I do what I do. We're providing commentary on all of it. So even when clients be like, listen to what the client just said there, this is what they're telling you. And we're walking through all of those different pieces that you really learn through experience right now, but we're wanting to shorten that timeline on it. So we're getting real client meetings. We're providing the commentary. We're providing resources around this. So a really, really great education package at an incredibly affordable price. Our number one thing is access to financial planning. So we're looking at like $30 a month. You can get access to these real financial planning meetings, see what financial planning in practice looks like, as well as get, all of the CE and all of the other things that come with that, but really trying to provide like a best-in-class education experience that really showcases and really, gives that inside look that so many new planners are wanting to see, like, what does real financial planning actually look like?
Yeah, I think that's an amazing thing for young advisors kind of coming out to, have that access because, it's not that easy to get into the client meetings at every firm and to have the experience and to see what planning looks like. And also in case it's not the planning that your firm does, right?
Yeah.
Like, I mean, because I know we don't have to call companies out, but there are companies, right, that have their way of doing it. And it's like, and then people are amazed. They leave that company 15 years later. And they're like, wow, it's not all like that.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. And to learn from my mistakes, like there, like this last meeting, I was just like, oh my God, do I really have to show this? And like, that's the whole thing, right? Like I
Yeah.
figured at the worst of it, I'm going to be a better planner because I'm having to watch my own meetings. But yeah, you get to see all of it at a price tag that we hope is, not thousands and thousands of dollars. We want our goal, like I said, is to change the way people think and talk about money. And if we can empower financial planners to have those conversations with their clients, like that's what we're here for. So we want to make this incredibly affordable and just really get the word out about financial planning and what an amazing career choice this is.
Well, that was an amazing closing line there too. So well, first of all, Hannah, thanks for everything you do. Thank you so much for your time here today, for joining the Framework podcast, everything you do. Excited to see, the creativity as you keep moving forward and building new things. And so last thing is, what's the best way for anyone listening to check out what you're working on, follow you, interact with you, any of those things?
Yeah, absolutely. So the easiest place to go is going to be amplifiedplanning.com. That's going to be the new website, or it is the website of where we're going to be at. I'm on all the social channels as well. Hopefully we're going to be doing a lot more video content, live video content. So Twitter, LinkedIn, but definitely go to Amplified Planning because that's where you'll learn more about what we're doing and really staying up to date on all we have going on because we do a lot and we move fast and we are full of new ideas. So it's definitely something that you want to be watching out for.
Yeah, awesome. Well, everyone check Hannah out. Again, Hannah, thanks so much for coming on. And thank you, all of the listeners, for listening to this week's episode of the Framework Podcast.